back on the reckoning. 420 coming into this second segment. We're going to the first hour, and it's going to be a while. We've got hopefully the next couple, maybe 3 segments. We'll see. I can maybe convince him to stick around with just a little while. I got Mr. Randy Cook in with me now, running for Francis Howell School Board here in St. Charles County, actually running for re-election. You were on first in 2022. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. So we're talking about this. Obviously, folks, Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, we have elections all across. For me, I'm in Francis Howell, so you have to convince me.
All right.
You have to convince me. But for some of us, we just have school board elections. For other places, you've got some other local things. But guess what? School board, local propositions, mayoral, all of them, and listen to me, all of them are just as, if not more important than when you went and voted for Donald Trump and Bob Onder and whoever. Mention the top federal Republicans. This is the same level of urgency, so I want to make sure you're listening, you're making a plan to get out and vote. Especially, this will take you just a few minutes. It's not going to be as crowded as in November. It should be. It's not going to be, though. So you have no excuse not to. But I'm glad to have Randy on with me now. Tuesday, April 8th is coming down to us. You can vote early still. How are you? Thank you for being with me, Randy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It's been a fun road so far, campaigning. And as you said, these are local elections. They're typically very low turnout. When I first ran in 2022, they were largely basically run by the teachers' unions. They would get their members to come out and vote, and the turnout was very low, usually around 10%, give or take, depending on the year, if there was anything else on the ballot. Mm-hmm. We've since gotten that up, at least in Francis Howell, to around 15%, which is still very low compared to a presidential election, but we're making slow progress, and with any luck, we'll have a little bit higher yet this year.
Mm-hmm.
So
that'd be really good. Well, I tell you what, we've got another one on. Ashley Sturm is going to be on with us Monday, folks, and then we might try to catch up with a few of you on Tuesday if we can. But as I've had the chance to sit down, I know that this is one of the most local things, and now one of the things people care about the most. They should have all along, but now we have a lot of parents paying attention more, especially in recent years because of a lot of other issues across schools. I want to make sure we get to know people. So if you would just, you've been on the school board now. Coming into the 3 years, but what's your background? What led you to run for this position to begin with? What was your history before it? And just let people know kind of where you're coming from.
Well, my background is I'm a civil engineer by trade. And that the school board is a volunteer position. It doesn't pay. It's a kind of a job you do after you do your day job and after you put the kids to bed. Then you do your school board work, or at least that's the way I do it. Engineer by trade. When I first ran in 2022, there were a lot of things going on, both nationally and locally within Francis Howell. Nationally, we were on the tail end of the COVID era, if you will. Academics were really suffering. We were lucky in Francis Howell. We always kept the schools open. We didn't close down the schools that next year after that initial March of 2020. So I was very pleased with that. But on the financial side of Howell, we had a lot of overspending on a particular construction project. Taxpayers were certainly not happy with that. So using my background, I came in and won the 22 election. I've got 2 young kids in the district, a kindergartner and a 3rd grader now. And so I want the district to be strong going forward. Of course, all of us homeowners want strong schools. You ask any real estate agent, they'll tell you that schools are a big variable when people are looking at homes. Proud to say that Francis Howell's certainly beating the state average of home prices, beating the St. Charles County averages. So we're certainly doing well there. Not to say that that's my accomplishment, but we certainly haven't ruined it as some would have had you believe 2 or 3 years ago. So that's a little bit of my background. Always interested in education, avid reader of books about education long before I ever even considered running for school board. And the opportunity presented itself, and I thought, well, I've read all these books. You read about all these topics, and what a better chance to make a change than just do it yourself. So yeah, I put my hat in the ring, and by the grace of God, I was elected in 2022, and here we are, 3 years later.
Well, that's great. I mean, this really is our entire system up and down. I mean, I think for the federal level, state level, local level, all of them. It really should be a season of service for citizens. And so much of it has just turned into a career. So, I mean, I so appreciate the local level because there's a real understanding for you, hey, this isn't my day job. This is like civic duty. This is my volunteer time to do these things. I really wish we treated Congress and the presidency that way still. It'd be nice.
Oh my.
Here I'm dreaming though. Maybe we'll have 60-cent gas a gallon again. But I digress. A lot of things have changed. But okay, so let me ask you this. Before we look forward, obviously, school board races, in my opinion, even though shamefully the total number of votes haven't gone up, the turnout in large part, a little bit, but not a ton. A lot of people's attention have shifted to this because in 2020, almost everyone's classroom, all their kids' classrooms came into their home and they saw for the first time a lot of what was being taught, how it was being taught, who the teachers were. I think that was pretty eye-opening for a lot of people. So you've obviously come in right on the backside of that, a lot of people paying attention. What do you think for your last 3 years there? What are a couple accomplishments or changes that you have been very glad either to take part in or see happen in Francis Howell? What's a feather in your cap where you think we're moving in the right direction? What would you say from your last 3 years?
Well, there's been several changes we've made. I would say some of the most important are on the financial side and the curriculum side. The schools exist to educate students first and foremost, and of course we need money to do that. We need the taxpayers' money, but we want to manage that well. On the curriculum side, much to what you spoke of, there were a lot of concerns about what's being taught, what kind of resources are being used. And it's been a long road over the last 3 years, but part of the role as a school board member is to look over these items. When I first came in, there was a concern about a couple of classes that had, standards that were written by the Southern Poverty Law Center. They were the social justice standards in education. The critical race theory was in part of the classes. We took a lot of lumps, but we ended up getting rid of those during my first 3 years here. Proud to say that those things are now gone out of Francis Howell, and we seem to be on a lot better path. It's not so much always what you do, but what you don't do on a school board. Mm-hmm. There's always so many people we call basically grifters. School boards spend tons of money, and there's always somebody there waiting to come in with their next shiny object of this thing will make students all the much better. And happy to say we were able to keep a very unproven math curriculum out of our K through 5 classrooms. This is where my kids were. This was very, very important to me. I did just a ton of research on this, and those are the type of things that a school board should be looking at. Is this effective? What's the research behind it? Not very exciting for most people, but for a school board guy like me, those are the type of things that I live for, and those are what I do. On the financial side, we've grown our reserves to around 30% now. When I came in, we were around 15%. Our reserves is our savings account, how much money we have in the bank. We're slowly drawing those down. Those are a savings for a rainy day here. A lot of our construction spending that I mentioned earlier was over budget. We reset all of that. We reprioritized all of our projects. We did a basic needs versus wants analysis. We're very transparent with the community about what we were doing next. Took about a year off to recalibrate everything, rebudgeted all the projects, and since then we've managed those well. We've kept them within scope, despite many people wanting to go out. The school board has reined a lot of that back in, and those are just some of the little things that we do on a monthly basis.
Now, remind me, let me know, because I hope can you stick around with me for another segment? Great,
absolutely.
I'd love to talk for a few more minutes, but go ahead. In case anyone's hopping in or out of the car, remind folks where they can find more information about you as they're doing their weekend research before voting, or if you're going to vote this weekend, where they're going to look you up and find more after this.
Sure. randycook.com is my website for Francis Howell, and you can vote early this Saturday morning at the St. Charles County Election Authority, and Election Day is Tuesday, April 8th.
Right. Yeah. All right, folks, Randy Cook, randycook.com, Francis Howell School Board. We'll be right back. We're going to spend just a few more minutes with Mr. Cook here. Talk a little bit more maybe about the future and plans and ideas. There's a lot of stuff coming for us, especially with the federal level rumblings of education. We'll see about it all. But we'll be right back. Taking a break here on The Reckoning. Hey, we're back. Back on The Reckoning. Mr. Fish tells me so. I hear the music, but we don't actually go until Fish says so. There you go. I rhyme all the time, and I'm going to stop. I'm sorry. No, don't groan at me. I'm allowed to do weird things. I was homeschooled after all. Remember that. Ironic, considering we're talking about public education right now. We've got Mr. Randy Cook in with me here. Another segment. We're going to keep getting to know him. randycook.com. This is, of course, the Francis Howell School Board.
Right.
For all y'all here in the St. Charles County. which this is massive. I forget how big Francis Howell is because I was driving down Highway 94 toward Augusta and Defiance, and I see signs out there, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is my school board, and I live up in St. Peter's. It's big. But randycook.com, again, Francis Howell. Tuesday is the election. You can vote, though, up at the election authority tomorrow morning. There's still some early voting going on. So get on out there. Now, you're the vice president of the board, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have extra authority when you speak on these matters, or something. Yeah,
I suppose.
Like I suppose. Well, that's good. Last segment, folks. If you're just now coming in, you're in the car. I see. I don't know. The Highway 70 is completely clear. Maybe something has happened. Nope. There goes a car. Okay, it's not empty. But if you're just getting in the car with us, last segment, we're just talking about some of the last 2 or 3 years. Randy been on the school board since 2022. Mm-hmm. So there's some stuff that's going on. You've seen it. This is not a brand new experience for you. But let me ask you now, moving forward. So I'm kind of curious, what are some of your plans moving forward? What are maybe a top 2 or 3 goals that you would like to put your fingerprints on? Hey, this should happen next, and we haven't started it, or we've talked about it, or we haven't even mentioned it. But I'm gonna drop this when we come in. Hey, all let's do this. I'm kind of curious what some of your next 2 or 3 priorities might be.
Well, I think every school board member's dream 3 years would be to improve academics, right? And all these other little things get in the way when, something makes the news, or we have financial problems, or those are kind of the things we have to triage all the time. And certainly when I first came on in 2022, there were a lot of things that we talked about a few minutes ago that had to be addressed. Francis Howell, as I like to say, which is true, is the top performing district in St. Charles County academically. That said, we can always be doing better. When I say we're the top, that means we have about, depending on the subject, usually around 60%, 65% of our kids that are on grade level, be it math or reading, give or take. And that's the best in the county, and that's actually really good by Missouri standards. But for the rest of, for those of us who look at it objectively and not relative to everyone else, we say 60.
On a scale of 1 to 100.
Right.
That's 60? That's it?
That's it? Or so.
That's even worse than presidential voting turnout, which is terrible at 70-something%. Anyway, I digress.
So, yeah, that, what we want to do, and we have the infrastructure in place now. We've actually just hired a new superintendent who has done this before, but it's really improving academics, primarily reading among our youngest students, elementary school kids. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that if a student learns to read, in grades, kindergarten through 3rd grade, the rest of their school and really the rest of their life is going to be drastically much easier than if they don't. I think, those of you out there who maybe didn't learn to read well or whatever, there's a phrase in kindergarten through 3rd grade, you learn to read, and after that you read to learn. And if kids don't learn to read well, using their phonics, using the phonemic awareness, then it's just going to be tough. Kids end up, they don't like school because it's hard. So, I'm not unique in that. I think every teacher, probably every administrator, every school board member that goes into this thinks, gosh, that's what I would love to do, but then all the other things get in the way. And so my priority is to keep as much of our focus on that as humanly possible, and then fend off all the other things that come in our way. So.
Well, and I mean, I think that's one of the number one things that has brought people's attention to this is not just like I want to put my kids in private or homeschool because I don't like the bad influences or this or that. It's really hey, these academics could be done a lot better because we're focusing on so much that's political, ideological in a sense that's not academic. What about reading, writing, math? Can we teach them to be good at reading, writing, math, give them the building blocks to move on?
Yeah.
Like you guys are teaching all sorts of stuff. I mean, social emotional learning has gotten really big. All sorts of stuff that like we're off into the weeds. If this isn't education, this is schooling. And then you're not only teaching these, but you're just teaching to meet the standardized testing. You're not actually teaching kids to set them up for success. And yet we always throw this guise on it of, well, we're making kids workforce ready or, all these different standards. It's like, whoa. Reading, writing, math. When did this become so complicated and yet less effective than ever before? But that's what's happened with a lot of politics that's come in instead of just teaching kids to read. To your point, phonics. It's like music to my ears. Whole word method has just been terrible. It has rotted our country from the inside out. But Let me ask you this specifically, because we're obviously all, if anyone turns on the cable news, we are consumed, not with our local school board, but with everything happening in Washington, D.C. So Trump administration potentially is going to completely eradicate the Department of Education. Congress has to put their stamp of approval on it. Obviously, a lot of the title spending is still there because federal funding was set up before. There's multiple layers. But if the Trump administration really does manage to dry up the federal level of involvement in education, and I'm not asking you to comment on if that's good or not. It is. It's fantastic, by the way, my opinion, just so everyone knows who's listening. What are you all thinking about? Is this already a conversation happening on the school board about, okay, so how is this going to affect down to the state level and then down to us? What do we do to move forward in a different way if this is going to radically change from the top down? Because we really have a pretty top-down approach in education, I feel like. I think it's, in some ways, it is just as bad as some of us think. In other ways, it really is your local school board still making the decision, but there's so much money and so many strings attached by the time it gets down. Like that's a huge influence.
Yeah, the federal influence cannot be understated for a local school board. Obviously, local school boards are ideal if they have, you want them to have ample control over the workings of the district. Obviously, we want rules and laws in place to prevent fraud and those basic things that everyone agrees with. But when the federal level starts coming in saying this is what you need to be teaching, I think that goes too far. A lot of this talk about the federal funding has been I guess to answer your question, from a school board level, no, we're not formally discussing this yet. But there's certainly water cooler talk among school board members and administrators about what this might look like. I can say there's been a lot of rumor out there that, gosh, there's the funding for special education kids or all these other different programs that are administered or funded through the federal government are being cut. Nothing. The grants are still flowing to the schools. All of the entitlement funding is still flowing to the schools. All of the discretionary grants are still flowing to the state to give out to the districts as needed. So as of right now, money is still flowing. Lots of people are, for lack of a better term, freaking out about that. There's been no impact so far, and there's no indication that there will be one other than just, the federal department potentially going away. If,
right,
as you say, Congress is the big hurdle there, and
yeah, Congress started it. They have to be the ones that end it officially, formally, at least. Well, I mean, let me ask you this then. If you had a wish list of a couple of things that could happen at the state level, obviously, our state legislature and executives are going to have to take a look at seriously shuffling DESE when and if this happens. What advice do you think you could give them? Like, what are a couple of things you'd say? Okay, hey, if you're about to really reshuffle Department of Elementary Secondary, here are the top two things I want you to think about.
I think DESE has a lot of things that they do that, in my opinion, are outside of their authority. They have just a number of programs and things that they're working on all the time. And my first question is always, where in the statute did the legislature give you the authority to put together this study on social emotional learning in school, whatever it may be. And over the years I've asked that, and it's always some very broad statute that's the general welfare. It's like almost like the general welfare
right.
Answer that we always get, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that just cleaning that up, I think, is a very large task that maybe the governor will take on. It depends who he appoints for the State Board of Education. That's another aspect of Missouri and schools that most people don't even know exist. But there's a State Board of Education, much like your local board. Most of those members that are there are just serving. They're past their terms, but new people haven't been appointed. So that's a whole other aspect that at the state level is worth watching if you're really interested in education. But what the legislature should do with DESE, to the best of my knowledge, DESE is still the largest department in the state of Missouri. They still push down a lot of rules. I would probably more rules than the federal. A lot of the things that they require, at the school board level, we like to talk about unfunded mandates. So, yes, the local schools take over 60% of your real estate and personal property tax to fund our schools. But we also get money from the federal. We get about 4%, give or take, from the federal level, and then we get state money as well. So every time you pay your state income tax or lottery tickets or all the other funding mechanisms there is for state education, that gets routed through DESI, and then there's formulas that, for lack of a better term, there's a the transfer of wealth almost, right? It's they reallocate the money to the schools that need it from the places that have the money. There's a term for that. What is it? But I know you know what it is.
Yes.
But at any rate, that's how the state formula works. There's been a call from the governor now to relook at how the schools are funded, how that formula works. It's based on attendance. It's based on number of students and all sorts of different variables there. But the formula should be looked at. I don't disagree, but I think DESI needs looked at also. And reined in, honestly.
And I mean, I think that's one of the big ones. And I see a couple on looking at your website and some of the talking points about what you're concerned about. One of them is, I know that we always talk about too much money flows through the schools, and then what is the number one response? Teachers need to make more money. I'm like, hey, my problem is not necessarily that I think you're paying teachers too much. My problem is I look around at the administrative jobs and ask, how many of these ought not to be here? What do you think the balance is in Francis Howell? Do you think there's some administrative pruning that needs to happen? Do you think you all are on the right track? How would you say that, the balance between teachers, bus drivers, people who are here to educate children, and then the administrative side, which often is where you find a lot of bloat?
I think we're in okay shape. I think it's been a little while since I looked at that, the ratio rather. Again, I've looked at it relative to our surrounding districts, and relative to our surrounding districts, we're in great shape. Less administrators per student ratio. As I always look around, and at this point, after being there 3 years, I've come to learn who most of the people in the central office, the administration, are, and I know what most of them do, but not quite all of them yet. And so that's a question always for. And if I didn't mention it, we have a new superintendent starting in July 1st. So that if I'm reelected, obviously he will come in, and I'm sure there'll be conversations about how he would like to organize his central office. If he's come here, he's probably already already knows that the board's not going to be very open to hiring a bunch more administrators and central office people. So I'm hopeful that he will make do with what he has there. And I'd be ecstatic if he came in and said, these couple of people aren't needed, which is probably wishful thinking. But as the board learns more about what all these positions do, and I think there could be conversations about which positions are needed and which aren't. And certainly, if a lot of the federal requirements goes away, there's certainly people in the office that deal with those federal requirements and the state requirements. Yeah. So if those lighten up, then there's just less. I don't want to say paper pushers, but less people whose job is just to do compliance. We've all seen the charts over the years of the number of students has grown. Has slowly grown. The number of teachers has slowly grown, but the number of administrators has just gone through the roof. And that's largely because of state and federal compliance laws that require just a boatload of data collection and reporting.
And that we get to yell at our legislators for. Shut that down. Shut it down. Oh, boy. Hey, randycook.com, folks. The election is Tuesday, April 8th. We'll get to know a little bit more about him here, and glad to have the opportunity. Randy, thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it so much. Folks, go vote, go get to know more, and go do a little bit more research. randycook.com, Francis Howell School Board. You get an opportunity to learn before you go vote. Folks, we'll be right back on The Reckoning.